Welcome to the Enchanted Ears podcast,
where we discuss anything and everything Disney.
I'm Angela.
And I'm Joe, and on today's episode, we are answering your DVC questions. And when I say you, I mean the royal you, as in the internet. We're doing a little bit of it's like the Wired Autocomplete. If you've ever seen those videos where they have celebrities answer questions about themselves from Google, we're doing the same thing, but for Disney Vacation Club.
I want our listeners to think that they are royal. You're talking about the internet. You're saying the royal you. You are all royal. I mean, we're all Disney fans here, so we can assume that you like princesses and princes and stuff.
Yeah,
so
royalty fits in with Disney. It's on brand.
Yeah. So I just want you to know that I view you, the listener, as royalty. You're awesome.
All right. Before we get into that, though, I do want to cover some Disney news of the week. So some news, and this might have come out a couple weeks ago, but I just kind of saw it. It just kind of bubbling up a little bit this week, is that apparently there is a Club 33 movie in development.
What?
So we've heard about there's a Tower of Terror movie in development with Scarlett Johansson. They've talked about maybe a Big Thunder Mountain Railroad movie. Now they're talking about a Club 33 movie in development. I'm actually kind of excited about this. It's going to be from Sean Levy, who's the director of Deadpool and Wolverine. He also did the Night at the Museum movies.
Not related to Eugene?
I don't think so, no.
Aww.
I'm not sure, because I believe he's Canadian as well, so maybe there is a relationship there.
And Daniel Levy?
But he did the Night at the Museum movies.
Huh.
And so they're saying that they're going for that vibe. And kind of the story they're saying is going to center on a young detective who gets a mysterious invite to the highly secretive Club 33 because a murder occurs on premises. So a little bit of Agatha Christie novels, with
Hercule Poirot.
Yeah, Death on the Nile, those type of movies. Seems like a murder mystery. They're talking about a little bit of Night at the Museum with magical aspects and stuff to it. But this kind of came out of nowhere. But I think this has a chance of being pretty decent.
Yeah, I'm surprised because I feel I don't know, there's something about Club 33 and the mystique of Club 33, and maybe they're just trying to add to it. But I feel that's a delicate balance, and I feel it's interesting. Maybe the number of applications is down and they're trying to
that is
bolster
the thing.
that.
They can kind of make it about anything. Kind of like what he did at Night at the Museum. You take the Natural History Museum and it's okay, well, what happens here at night? You could believe that everything in the History Museum comes to life at night. Club 33 has this aura with Disney fans that who knows what happens inside those halls, and it's you could have basically anything happen. So I think this will be interesting. To me, the question is, does this sound like a Disney Plus movie, or does this sound like an actual theatrical release? Because this seems like this is going to be more kid family friendly, probably not super plot heavy. Not very intricate. I could be wrong.
I don't know. If you have the Deadpool Night at the Museum person, I think that this has massive potential. You get some star power behind that. Not entirely sure who you get. I feel we're in a weird era where there are movie stars, but the movie stars are I don't know. It's kind of
cinema
tough.
Has fallen since the strike and everything. It is definitely not bounced back to that extent. So you're right, there's very few people. It used to be, if Will Smith was in a movie, if Tom Cruise was in a movie, you went to see it just based on them. You didn't even care what the movie is. But I feel you don't have that really anymore. It has to be something that really gets people excited.
You know who I'd like to see in this movie? This is really out of right field. Like a Cara Delevingne. I feel a mystery movie. I think she'd be good in that. I think she has an interesting, I'd almost like to see her as the detective. I'm trying to think of some other people that would be interesting. Timothée Chalamet. I think if they could land Chalamet.
Put Chalamet. That's a big name right there. That might get people excited.
Yeah, I think that something, get some of the younger Hollywood people in there. Maybe throw in an Owen Wilson for your older folks like us.
Yeah,
that'll make me happy. But I think
it's interesting. Fun. Again, it's in development. We've talked about, there's a couple other movies in development. They've talked about this shared universe of theme park attractions. So I think this is all kind of part of that. we still don't have any like hard dates on any of this stuff. So it'll be interesting of like how much of this actually like happens. But again, just another kind of interesting tidbit. The other thing I wanted to mention is that ILM immersive. So this is Industrial Light and Magic. So that's the Lucasfilm people that do all the special effects.
I thought you were doing some sort of abbreviation like OMG or LOL.
Industrial Light and Magic. So they have this like immersive division, which does their like VR. So they've done some stuff for the Oculus. I think like it's the Darth Vader game. I forget exactly what it's called, but they've done that. But they have a new one that's going to be exclusively on the Apple Vision Pro. So that's Apple's new VR headset. And this is a what if video game.
Oh, wow.
So it's taking the Marvel What If series and putting you into one of those stories. It seems like Wong recruits you, and you're kind of going through and you're helping him because there's some sort of issue that happens, in the storyline. So it's MCU related, but maybe not mainline MCU because it's through What If. But it looks really good. Like at least the trailer, I guess if you want to call that, for the game that they put out, it seems interesting. It seems like the graphics are pretty cool. And this is like the first foray into the new Apple Vision Pro. Like I said, they've done some stuff with the Oculus, but like to do exclusively on Apple, there's not a lot of apps on that yet. So this is interesting that and Disney's always worked well with Apple because of the Steve Jobs relationship in the past. To see them kind of doing this, to see, what do they do next in terms of like VR and augmented reality if this works?
So I am not one of the people that have been hyped about the Apple Vision Pro.
Well, it's too expensive. I don't know how many people even have it. It's like $3,000 or $4,000.
Oh my gosh.
Like not many people are buying it.
But I will say, as time goes on, I think that the prices are going to come down. And I was a big fan of like the Void. Like we did a couple of the Void experiences.
Yeah, ILM I think was a part of that.
Yeah,
well.
And now I will say with the Void, it's not the same experience because there were, you were seeing something with the VR, but also there were things to experience in the real world.
Yeah,
like
you were physically in a space.
Yeah, so you could feel, if you've never done a Void, it was a VR collaboration where they had like also a room built out. So there were railings, and if you put your hand out to touch them, there were actually railings there. So that was a really kind of a cool experience. They did a few different things. They had a Marvel one. They had, I think, a Star Wars one was the first one.
They started with Star Wars,
and then
they had Wreck-It Ralph.
And the last one we did was Wreck-It Ralph, and I think that was my favorite one. I thought it was so fun to like be in a cartoon, but this gets me really excited to be like able to be a superhero. I
want to be opening portals and stuff. Like it fits naturally with it, where again you have a VR headset, that's a natural hand motion, so now you can do something that will create something in your vision, will create a portal. Because I think that's one of the things, like the Void, it was interesting because like with the Star Wars, you had a blaster, so you had something kind of tactile to, you were basically infiltrating as a stormtrooper.
Yeah.
And so you had a blaster and it gave you something to do. I think that's one of the things that's difficult with VR is you have controllers or you have hand movements, but there's not a lot of games that just naturally do that. So like lightsaber games work well because, if you're holding something, it can be a lightsaber, but like, yeah, if you're just playing this Marvel game, what are you going to do with your hands? So it's cool. Like you can be Iron Man and potentially have a blaster. You can do portals. Like those movements kind of lend well, and I think will help you feel more immersed in the game and in the world.
Yeah, I love this idea, and I thought for the first few seconds of you talking about this, I didn't hear Marvel. I heard Star Wars because I know that there have been like kind of people have like rumored, tossed around that there would be a what if like Star Wars, or maybe we've talked about how that would be really cool if they did a what if Star Wars. So at first I was like, oh, this is a what if Star Wars. Like I'm all in on that. But yeah, I think that this is really cool and it makes me interested in an Apple Vision Pro.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so let's move into our main topic here. Answering common DVC questions. So like I said, this is going to be kind of like the Wired Autocomplete. So typing into Google, basically like if you've ever seen this, like celebrities, it's like, who is the celebrity? And then it just whatever Google kind of autocompletes answering those questions. So common questions people are searching for about Disney Vacation Club or DVC. So we'll start with what? So what is Disney Vacation Club? That's a very common one. I think that's a good one to start with. I think that's a question a lot of people have. It's a common thing of like, what is DVC? What is Disney Vacation Club?
Yeah, I think this is also sort of answers why. Like, what is the advantage to it? Because obviously you're paying money up front. So it makes you sort of question what is the purpose of it. And again, it's sort of one of those, we've talked about kind of how Disney has levels. And so, when you first like want to book a trip to Disney, you don't even know this exists. So
yeah. And I think at its simplest form, Disney Vacation Club, to look at it, is a way to lock in the price of future hotel stays. And that's kind of what it's set up for. That's basically the main selling point. That's kind of what Disney will sell you on. So essentially, you are paying today for the next decades, depending on how long the term is of future hotel stays.
And these are not, your all-star hotels. These are your deluxe hotels.
Yeah, so it's all the deluxe resorts at Walt Disney World. So it's the Grand Floridian, Boardwalk, Old Key West, the Riviera is the newest one, Animal Kingdom Lodge, Wilderness Lodge, Polynesian, Bay Lake Tower, Beach Club, Copper Creek, and Saratoga Springs. Then over at Disneyland, you do have the Grand Californian and the new villas at the Disneyland Hotel.
And then you have some like kind of weird, sort of almost shocking ones, because when people think of Disney, you think of just the resorts, but also they have DVC at Aulani, which is over in Hawaii, and they also have Vero Beach and Hilton Head as well, because they actually have properties there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so basically, like I mentioned, decades is what you're kind of paying for. So the deeds, and they are deeded interest in the property, are good for 50 years from the opening of the resort. So since basically the villas is the new one, so that one would have 50 years if you bought into it now, but any of the other ones have been open for at least, like the Riviera, a couple years, so you're not going to have the full 50 years from that. And according to Disney Vacation Club and according to Disney, if you buy directly from them, it takes around 10 years to start to see savings. But if you keep it for the life of basically the contract, you should see up to 50% savings over that life. Because again, you're kind of locking in today's prices, and then 30 years hotels are going to cost a lot more. So the idea is that you'll be able to book a room when they're $1,000 a night room, still kind of around what you locked in at of maybe $300 or $400 a night. So that's kind of where you start to get that 50% savings.
Right. And again, I kind of want to re-emphasize what you just said. It is from 50 years from when like that resort opens. So every resort has its own number. So if you buy in, for example, at the Polynesian, you're not going to get as much time on your DVC like property essentially as you would if you bought at the Riviera, which is one of the newer places.
Exactly. And what you're buying is you are buying points. You're buying an allotted number of points that you get annually. So if you hear people, how many points do you have at DVC? You're buying 100 points, 150 points, 200 points. That's how many points you get each and every year. And that's what you use to book. So basically the number of points you need varies kind of based on the cost of the hotel and the hotel room. So the time of year you go. So, the Polynesian during a busy time might be 16 or 17 points a night on the weekends, then at 15 points, during the week. So that's kind of how you're booking. So you're not locked into one specific week or a set number of days. You're locked into a number of points, and then you can use them however you feel like using them.
The next question is, what is the point of Disney Vacation Club? And again, like for Disney, at least on their part, because we kind of explained, why you might want to join, but from their perspective, it's a way for them to fund the building of new properties.
Yeah, it really is. And because again, how it works is you're buying an interest in this hotel, and on top of that initial outlay to purchase the initial allotment of points, you have annual dues that you have to pay, and those vary between like $7 and $8 a point that you pay each year, and then that goes into funding the maintenance and the upkeep of the DVC portion of the hotel. Because a lot of these hotels, like the Polynesian, there are a couple buildings that are DVC, but then the rest of the resort isn't DVC. And so, like, if you book DVC, you're only ever staying at those couple rooms. So that goes into the maintenance and the renovation. So whenever they update the rooms, it's coming out of basically that fund from your annual maintenance points. And, I think initially it really is. It's like you're selling all these points and it helps them recoup the cost to kind of build this and keep these hotels going. And then again, for you individually, if you love Disney, it's a way to save money over a very long term. So again, you have to be somebody that's going every year and planning to go for the next 30 or 40 years. Then you have the opportunity to save some money. All right, and the next one is, what is Disney World Club 33? So this popped up on Google. It is a very different club. It's way more expensive and much more difficult to get into to become a member. So
there's also an application process. Like, it's not like you just go in and you purchase points and there's a free system where you can purchase from Disney, which is how the DVC works. Club 33, they actually go, like, there's an application process and they go through them. And just because you have the money to join doesn't mean that you will get in. There's a wait list. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, I like that this comes up, though, that like this is a common enough question that they get conflated between, Disney Vacation Club, Club 33, that people are kind of asking about that. But yes, very different club that none of us will probably ever get to for the most part. But we have a good shot of being Disney Vacation Club members. So moving on, is Disney Vacation Club like a timeshare? So we talked a little bit about this. And so probably from the initial response of like, what is Disney Vacation Club, you can probably gather, yes, it is like a timeshare. And it is, you're buying, again, it's a deed, you're buying an interest in a property for, your partial use of that property. It is a little bit different than like your traditional timeshare that a lot of people think of, though.
Yeah, it is nice because I think in a lot of traditional timeshares, you purchase that property basically for a certain set week, or you use it at a certain set time. Whereas, again, what we mentioned, the DVC, you purchase points and then you can use those points accordingly. So you can decide one year you just don't want to use the property at all, and you can roll over those points. Now, you do have, I think, a set amount of time that you have to use those points, but still, and then it kind of goes the other way too. If we go multiple times in one year, we can borrow from the next year, and we don't have to go at the same time, which is a nice amount of like flexibility that is built in there.
Right. Yeah. You're not locked into a set time. And also with the expiration of DVC, so again, after the 50 years are up from the opening of the resort, your contract expires and you don't get points anymore. I think timeshare, like, you have it forever. I mean, I know a lot of people struggle to get out of timeshares.
Yeah.
So and we've never looked into a timeshare, so I don't know. Maybe they do have expirations on them as well. But that might be a point of differentiation as well.
Yeah, it is kind of nice because it's like, okay, you can essentially inherit a timeshare, and you can inherit, I believe, DVC as well. I kind of looked that up. It's a whole thing, but it is, at least, again, you have a set amount of time on that, and then after that, you're out of that contract. So
yeah,
it's kind of nice to know that you're sort of relieved of that commitment if you wanted to get out. Mm-hmm. Next question is Disney Vacation Club legit? And the answer there is yes, 100%.
Yeah,
we are members.
I could see why a lot of people would be Googling this and asking about this, because again, it is a timeshare. It's a similar thing. There's a lot of scams out there around this type of stuff. But yes, Disney Vacation Club is legit. Now, if you are going to a third party to buy it resale, or you're renting points, not sure, those could potentially not be legit. I mean, I think you'd have to be careful looking at that sort of stuff.
Due diligence.
Yeah, but if you're going directly to Disney or a reputable, third party like reseller, it's legit. Like, you're not gonna, especially if you go to Disney. Like,
and that's how
real.
We purchased ours. We didn't go through Disney, but we did a third party seller. I know we actually did a interview a long time back from her. And she kind of explained the whole process. So that's a cool thing to maybe check out. how many hundreds of episodes ago was that? Probably a couple hundred. But yeah, it's an interesting process, but it is totally legit. And the next question is Disney Vacation Club worth it? And the answer here is, for us at least, we think so.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that, if you're a person that does not go very often, I think that probably not. You're probably better off just, if you're going every several years or once every 10 years, no, you don't want to buy DVC. But if you're going on the yearly basis, then it is definitely something to consider, especially if you like to stay in those deluxe hotels, because you're getting them at a lower rate. I mean, and sometimes I think we've even looked at, essentially, I think it works out that we're paying about the same amount to stay in the Polynesian as we would to stay at like Art of Animation or Pop Century. So
yeah, and again, that's kind of where the longer you keep it, that's where there's savings built in, because the price of the other hotels continues to go up, and the idea is you're kind of locked in to it. But you're right. I think we think so. I think it's definitely not for everybody. I think it's a case by case basis. We think it's worth it. Yeah, we talked a couple months ago. We kind of did like our lessons learned from a couple years of ownership, and we break down like more of the costs there of like buying direct from Disney versus buying resale, and like what that works out to, per night versus like what Disney's charging per night, what you're saving. So I think it's worth it if you stay typically at like moderate deluxe. If you're somebody that like always stays at the value resorts, and like we said, it does kind of work out that now, because those value resorts are creeping up in price, they are getting more and more expensive, that now Art of Animation Pop Century can be $250, $270 a night now, whereas a few years ago that's where kind of the moderates were, and they were sub 200.
Yeah.
So now that they're creeping up, it does become worth it even at that level. But definitely if you are somebody that like, you're always staying at the higher level moderates, or you're staying at the deluxes, it probably does make sense, especially if you're going at least once a year, to go ahead and do this. All right, the next one is Disney Vacation Club for life.
For life.
So we've kind of answered this, touched on this a couple of times already, but it is not for life. It is for the contract is good 50 years from the building of the resort. Now, Disney will offer to extend that, like once they get towards the end, for additional money. It's not like that's going to be for free. Like the original ones, like Old Key West and Saratoga Springs, there's actually like 2 sets of contract dates on some of those, because they were built in the 90s, but then like Disney bought a lot of those back, those like points back from people, and resold them and added years to them. So I think some of them have like 40 plus years left, when other contracts only have like 30 plus years left. So Disney, I think, sometimes does this, and I think we haven't seen enough resorts get to that 50 point yet to really understand
the 50 years.
Yeah, the 50 years. Thank you. To understand what they're going to do when they all start getting to that point of, do they, are at 30 years, are they starting to buy them back and reissuing them for 30 or 40 years from there? And that's how they roll them forward? Or are they offering you, hey, you can extend this for another 10 or 20 years? So I think it remains to be seen, but it is definitely, it's not for life. You have that cutoff period.
Yeah. And the next question is Disney Vacation Club a good investment? And I would say on this one, no, it is not an investment.
Yeah,
don't look at it that way.
Investment.
You are not purchasing property. It is not something that you're going to, get value out of and then be able to pass on to future generations. Again, there is a end to that. It is like an end to the contract, and it's really you just sort of paying upfront for future vacations.
Yeah, it's a vacation expense, and I think a lot of people, when they look at it, they do look at it like an investment, and they do say that of like, oh, I was DVC or whatever, I got out of it, it wasn't worth it, I lost a ton of money on it, or something like that. And it's like, you're looking at it wrong. It is an investment. This isn't a rental property that you're buying in Florida, and then you're gonna Airbnb it when you're not using it to help pay for it, and then you're gonna own something at the end of the day and have equity in it. This is 100%. You have to look at it as you are paying for your hotel room. It's a vacation expense. You just happen to be paying for your hotel room all right now.
Yeah, it's a way of looking at saying, okay, I know already I am going to be going to Disney World. I'm going to be going every year, about maybe every couple years, but I know I can sort of roll over points, borrow points. And so I would like to stay at a nice hotel. I'd like to lock in my prices. That is sort of where it is more, again, beneficial, because you're saying, okay, I know I'm going to use this, and I have the interest in staying at, again, those deluxe hotels. So that's how you sort of need to look at it, not as an investment.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so moving on to the whys. Why join Disney Vacation Club? I think simply you love Disney World, you go at least once a year, and you want to stay at deluxe hotels and save a little bit of money on doing that. I think if you hit those 4 criteria, then that's why you should join.
Yeah, and again, it's something that you should, you look into, because I think a lot of people would immediately say, I don't know if that's for me. If you sort of meet those criteria, and it might be then good for you to look at it and say, oh, okay, I can see how this can actually work out financially. But again, I think it's good to have somebody who is good with finance. Like, this is definitely something I would probably never do if I was on my own or with a different person. Like, you are the one that is the the financially responsible.
Yeah, you have to be able to afford it. I mean, off the bat, obviously, it is a big upfront investment. Based on these things.
We just said, don't think of it as an investment.
Upfront
expense.
Upfront, yeah, expense. $30,000+ to kind of buy in, basically at the current point value and the number of points you would need. But I think the nice thing about DVC is there is so many people that belong. Like, I saw a stat. I'm not sure how accurate or up to date it is, because I think it was from a few years ago, but there's an estimate that there's like 200 to 220,000 DVC members. So there's a lot of people out there, and like anything Disney, there is a lot of information out there. There's a lot of Facebook groups. There's a lot of people on YouTube that covers this. In the same way, like, if you have questions about an annual pass, there's a lot of people that have annual passes at Walt Disney World. There's tons of Facebook groups. Like, there's a lot of people talking about it. So if you have questions, and that's why we're having this episode, to try to answer some of these questions, because these are obviously commonly asked questions that people have. And
we have no vested interest in whether or not you purchase DVC. So we're just giving you our honest opinion on this.
This is kind of our thoughts. But to your point of, like, do your research, like, look up the information. It's very easy to find that. Like, it's not like, I feel like, in a lot of instances, like non-Disney, like sometimes if you're trying to figure,
it's not Club 33 where it's like some of that stuff is hard to find.
If you're trying to buy, like, what's the best fridge to buy or something like that, like, it's you know what I'm saying, like, it's sometimes hard to find, like, information like that. But like with Disney, there's just so much information out there. Sometimes there's actually almost too much information.
I was just gonna say, I could see that being overwhelming to me.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, if you are interested, and to your point, if you're like, I'm not sure if this is for me, and I don't know that I want to make a 40, 50-year commitment to this type of thing, look up some Facebook groups. Like, get feedback from people of, like, what are the pros, what are the cons you've had? Like, what do you like about it? What don't you like about it? Because then there's a question of, like, well, what resort do I want to be at? Because of, like, your home resort and all that sort of stuff.
And that's a whole thing too, because I mean, when we were looking to buy, we considered Animal Kingdom Lodge, because it's super nice. Like, Animal Kingdom Lodge is beautiful. They have great food there. And one of the reasons why we ended up not going there is just because it's Animal Kingdom Lodge is a lot more out of the way. So then we looked at just the convenience of being at one of the, couple hotels.
The monorail resorts.
Yeah, the monorail resorts. And so we looked at the Poly because of that. So it wasn't that the Poly had the best food, or even, like, we were more interested in the accommodations. We were like, that's a nice hotel. We do like the way it is. And I mean, it does actually have really nice food.
Oh, yeah.
But, like, we were willing to sort of concede a little bit, because we realized that, being on the monorail and being that close to the parks,
there's value to that.
Had added value for us.
All right. So the next question that a lot of people have is, why is Disney Vacation Club so expensive?
The simple answer is because it's Disney.
I mean, that is true. Is because it's Disney. I mean, I would say even on top of that, the simple answer and this is because I'm a numbers economics nerd, is just simple supply and demand. So
Ben Wyatt over there.
the fact that it is Disney, I think, aids in that. The fact that there are so many people that are willing to buy in, Disney can charge this much money for it, and so like if there wasn't hundreds of thousands of people trying to buy into these resorts, Disney wouldn't build more resorts because there's no demand there, and they wouldn't charge more. It's the same way that like they raise ticket prices and still 20 million people go to the Magic Kingdom, so they go, well, I guess people don't care that they pay 20 times what they paid 5 years ago. Let's just raise prices more. And until people stop going, like Disney's just going to keep charging you more and more money. And so that's like the very basic question, answer to it. But obviously it's a little more nuanced than that. It kind of goes back to like what we've been talking about. Like you're prepaying for trips.
Speaking of that, Mr. Numbers, do you have an accounting joke for us?
Do I have an accounting joke for you? No, I don't have an accounting. Do you have an accounting joke? I have an accounting joke that will make no sense to anybody that's not an accountant. So I'm not going to say it.
I think you should.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Is this a knock knock joke?
Okay. It's not a knock knock joke.
Knock knock.
All right. So somebody's interviewing for a new accountant, and he's got a couple candidates. So the first candidate comes in and he says, "What's 1 + 1?"
2.
The candidate says 2, and he goes, "Okay, no."
I won.
Next. He goes, the next candidate. He goes, "Okay, what's 1 + 1?" And the candidate says
2.
And he goes, "Nah, I'm sorry, not you." Next. And he goes to the third guy, and he goes, "What's 1 + 1?" He doesn't say 2, because I'm gonna cut you off. He goes, "Whatever you want it to be." And the guy says, "You're hired." And that's accounting right there for you. Is that you just make up whatever you want. I apologize to everybody that's not an accountant here. Any of our listeners that are accountants, please reach out to me and let me know that you laughed a little bit so I don't feel so bad about saying that joke.
I have to call in all the other accountants and from the other offices to come hear this good joke you just told us.
So that's our joke. But yeah, so basically it's expensive because you're paying for at most 50 years worth of trips. So you have to think about that. Like if you went to Disney once a year for 50 years, how much are you going to pay every year over that amount of time? And you're just paying for it all up front. So that's why it's so expensive. But you're right. The fact that it's Disney and the fact that a lot of people want to go,
yeah,
kind of runs up the price there.
So our next question is, how much does Disney Vacation Club cost? And the answer to this question is $225 per point if you are going to the Riviera and cabins at Fort Wilderness.
Yeah, so these are the two
newest
active resorts that they're selling at Walt Disney World. They're at $225 a point.
Yeah, and then $239 at the villas at Disneyland Hotel.
Yeah, and I believe they're still selling Alani, and I think that's around the $225 a point. Like Alani, I think just has so many points, and again, it's in Hawaii, so
it's a little bit of a trek for most of the United States.
Yeah, like you're not going to buy that as your home resort. As like a primary property. So I think that's why that has a lot of points and they're still actively selling it. But yeah, so basically between $225, $239 a point. Like I mentioned earlier, you also then pay monthly dues, like maintenance dues on top of this.
So like an HOA almost.
Yeah, kind of. It goes to, again, the upkeep, the maintenance, all that sort of stuff. For these resorts, it's around $7 to $10 a point, depending on the resort. You have to buy a minimum of 100 points from Disney. This fluctuates like basically every year. Disney changes what the minimum number of points you have to buy from them is. Like a few years ago, it was, I think, 150.
Like, oh, wow.
They've actually lowered it.
Wow.
I think like 5 or 6 years ago.
Wasn't it like 75?
It was like 75, and then it slowly went up. And I think after the pandemic, they like lowered it back down. So the minimum you have to buy is 100 points. So if you do the math, if you buy 100 points at $225 a point, you're paying $22,500. Now, if you want to be a full DVC member, this is something that I don't think probably a lot of people ask about because a lot of people don't necessarily know, because this is kind of like a nuanced thing that...
Yes.
And it's weird because even on the website for DVC, the minimum is 100 points. But it's not very clear that if you only buy the 100 points, you don't get the full DVC member benefits, you still have to buy 150 points from Disney to be considered full DVC. And what full DVC member means is you have
you have access.
You can get the cheaper annual pass.
Oh yeah.
You can buy the annual pass that you save like $500 on. It's the Sorcerer Pass that's only $1,000 a year instead of the Incredipass Pass. So you can buy that. You can go to the DVC lounges. You can pool hop. You can you have all of those benefits. So
I was gonna say I think we get pool hopping benefits as well.
Yeah. So if you do resale, and again they changed this like 7 or 8 years ago, because before if you bought resale, as long as you bought whatever the number of points at the time was. Because again, before it was like you had to buy 100 points to be full DVC. Now it's 150. It keeps going up. But even if you bought those resale, you still got like the full membership. Now you can't.
Oh, really?
Now you can't do that. If you buy resale.
So we got like grandfathered in essentially.
Well, no, we're not full DVC, but the only thing you get is pool hopping.
Oh, okay.
So you can still do the resort pool hopping, even if you're not full DVC. So if you get the 100 points, you can still do pool hopping. I also believe you can get access to like the top of at the California Grill, like the top of the Contemporary.
Yeah.
But again, I think that fluctuates because again, Disney can change these benefits at any time. But that is something to keep in mind of like because Disney's website's not clear on that. You got to minimum's 100. You got to buy from them. But if you want full DVC, it's 150.
And another benefit that you get, or you might get, is whenever you check in at the park, you get a purple ring and they tell you welcome home unless you're me.
You did not sign up.
I tried and I did poorly at it and I don't know how to do it. And I'm so sad now because I want to be a purple ring like you, but I just show up like, I think green, which is like the norm.
It's just the normal one. Yeah.
The normal color, but yours always turns purple.
If you're DVC, it tells you welcome home and the at Walt Disney World, and the thing kind of lights up purple. So
yeah, I gotta talk to somebody about getting that because I didn't know about the purple benefit. It's like a magenta.
Yeah, you didn't care. You're like, I don't really need to register for this.
But now I'm really jealous, and every time we check in, I get really upset. Unless I usually go in before you, so then if I don't look back, then I don't get too upset because I just don't see it.
Yeah, but I always make reference to it. I was like, hey, I'm purple again.
He likes to rub it in.
I do. I really do. All right, so how do Disney Vacation Club points work? Touched on this a little bit, but to get kind of more detailed into the points, you have an allotted number of points like we talked about that you're purchasing, and you get that allotment annually.
And how many points, just for reference, how many points do we have? I forget.
We have 100 points.
Okay.
So we get 100 points each and every year. There is this idea of use year. So again, this is kind of in like the nitty gritty that I don't think people are asking these questions because this isn't something you really know about like high level. This is like once you really start getting into this, but your points have a use year. So that is a month. They call it use year, but it's really like your month that you get them. So like ours is December. So December 1st is when we get our number of points.
And was that, I'm trying to remember, was that when our contract went through, or was that potential like just?
No, so when you buy resale, it's whatever the contract is. Okay. I think if you buy from Disney directly, because you get the points available immediately, so that might dictate your use year, or they give you kind of like a use year, spread out throughout the year. But basically once that contract's initiated, if you buy resale, you kind of carry through that use year. So that's the month that you get your allotted number of points. So what people say is you should think about like, when do you frequently go? Because if you typically go in the summer, you probably want your use year around that time, because the thing is, you mentioned it a little bit, like borrowing points, banking points. So if you're not going to go to Disney one year, you're not going to use all of your points. You can bank those points to use for next year. Or if you need more points this year, you can borrow points from the subsequent year and kind of pull them in. But you have to bank them. I think it's 3 months before your use year. So if your use year is too far away from like when you go, you may not know if you're going to use them or not, and then you could potentially lose them. So we've never really had an issue with the use year. I mean, if you kind of pay attention to it and you know when you're going to go, you can easily like bank and borrow them in time. But that's kind of the one thing to kind of keep in mind with where the use years could play.
And again, I think that is an interesting like personality thing. Again, between you and I don't know where I would organize my information, where I would figure out and remember like, oh, okay, I need to check and make sure we've used our points. So for me, if I didn't have you, I feel like I would find that to be a stress point. Like that would stress me out knowing that I have to keep track of that. So again, kind of going back and revisiting that question of, is this something for you? If you're a person that is sort of more like me, where you fly more by the seat of your pants, you're not a big, life planner like that, then it might not be something for you, because that's something that might just be in the back of your mind, and you might let it slip, and it obviously that would be really frustrating to lose out on your points.
Yes, lose your points. I think two things for us. One, we've gone every year we've had DVC, so we've used up all of our points, so it hasn't been an issue of banking points. I think the other thing is typically we're going in like the beginning of the year, because that's when all like the races are, January, April. And so that December use year works well for us because we're using most of the points quickly after we get them. Or otherwise we would know by April or May, if we haven't used all of our points and we don't have any other trips planned, that we're not going to need them and we can bank them. Because it's actually, it's 5 months before your
so
month.
Not 3, it's 5.
Yeah, it's not 3, it's 5. So like for December,
Sorry.
It would be by the end of July, you'd have to bank them. So we would know that, by May, if we haven't gone, because we haven't done any races or we don't have anything planned, that, hey, go ahead and bank them, then we can just use them next year. All right, and then our last question is how to rent Disney Vacation Club points. So we've talked about resale a little bit, so that's something, we didn't get into like a lot of specifics, but that's how we did get our contract. It's a way, you're buying it from somebody else with resale, and you're buying it at a reduced price per point. So, Disney, like we talked about, is $225, $239 a point. You can buy resale for some resorts are $130 a point. Some resorts are $170 a point. But you have to remember, those resorts have been around for 10 plus years. So you're not getting 50 years. You're getting 30, 20. You're getting a smaller number of years. So that is also why they are cheaper, because you don't have as many opportunities to use them. So that's all kind of something to keep in mind. But the other thing, and I think a lot of people do this, and to your earlier point, if you're maybe interested, you're not sure if DVC is for you, renting points is an option that you could use to then see, how's this DVC thing work? Do I like staying at these hotels without kind of making that initial commitment?
Yeah. So it's sort of nice for both the buyer and the seller. You can kind of test drive the DVC hotel. Also, obviously, the seller hasn't used those points and they don't want to lose them. So they can kind of recoup some of the cost for, what they've paid up front. So it works out nicely for everybody. So this is something to maybe look into if what we've talked about sounds sort of interesting to you and you're curious.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you own DVC, it's kind of like Airbnb out your rental property is essentially what it is, because it's saying like, I'm not going to use these points this year. And a lot of times people sell them if they're not using them to help cover the maintenance costs, because you have to pay those maintenance costs every year. So if you're not going to go, you can rent out your points, help cover the maintenance costs. Also, a lot of times people do this if you're going to go on a Disney cruise instead of go to Walt Disney World. You rent out your points, you take that money, and you put that money towards your Disney cruise. So it's a way to do that. And then, if you're renting points, you kind of get that discounted rate at the hotel. Is the idea of, Disney's rate is $600 a night. If you rent points, maybe you get it for $300 or $400 a night. Yeah. The one kind of thing I would mention as a word of caution, and we've never rented points, so I don't necessarily know all of the details, but my understanding of it is somebody has already booked a set time and date, and you are basically renting that specific thing from them. It's not like you're saying, oh, just give me your 100 points this year and I'll do whatever I want with them. It's kind of like we would have to book.
You are like taking somebody else's vacation.
Basically, like we would have to book a week at the Poly and say, June 1st through the 8th, we have booked. We'll sell that to you for $1,000. Do you want that? And so that's one thing to kind of keep in mind, that like you don't necessarily have like the flexibility like you do if you just book through Disney of, oh, my trip changed, I need to move the dates. I don't know how that works. That's one thing. Just to
June
keep in mind.
2nd. June 2nd works better for me. June 2nd through the 9th.
Right. And
so.
I think like the rental sites, like you can kind of look and see what's available for like your time period and stuff. But again, like it's kind of booked and there's not as much flexibility with moving DVC around. So just one word of caution there.
And kind of, I know this wasn't one of the questions that you found, but this is me just kind of, knowing that this might be something that people might be thinking about. And that question is, if you buy points at a hotel, are you stuck at that hotel? So again, like we bought from the Poly, so do we always have to stay at the Poly, or do we have some flexibility to stay other places? Do we have to rent points from somebody else? So I think this is a good question for us to sort of address just as a final point.
Yeah, so the resort you buy the points from is called your home resort, and that allows you to book starting 11 months in advance. We really didn't talk about like the booking window. Like once you have these points, again, you have points to use as you see fit. So you can book 11 months in advance at your home resort.
So that gives you kind of a nice advantage because it's quite a long time in advance. So we've used this before to book marathon weekend, and that way we are insured to have a place to stay. It's on the monorail, so it makes it really nice and convenient for us.
It's a nice advantage for two reasons. Because one, it's an advantage over other DVC members that aren't DVC members at your resort. But because you're 11 months out, it's also an advantage over people just booking regular trips.
Yep.
Because like we can book, we could book a 2025 trip in like February for January, obviously. And that's before Disney has their 2025 packages out. So like we can lock up a hotel room before it kind of even goes on sale to the general public. Again, it's very early in the year, but to your point, marathon weekend, you get an advantage there.
If you know in advance you want to go.
And then you can book at any of the other DVC resorts, but if it's not your home resort, it's only 7 months out. So that becomes a lot more difficult because, again, all of the people that is their home resort, they've been booking for 4 months already. So you can usually find stuff available, but it might not be, it might not be
where you want.
It might not be where you want. It might not be when you want. It might also be, hey, I'm going this week in July. This hotel's open for 3 days of the 4. So you could do a split stay or something, so you might be able to use your points for a little bit of it, but not the whole thing. So you just don't have as much flexibility when you're booking at your non-home resort.
Right. Yeah. I think that was, good answer. And I think an interesting question.
Thank you. It was a good question. So if there's anything we didn't cover that anybody of our listeners are thinking about in terms of DVC, send us a message on Instagram at Enchanted Ears Podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, just ask a question in the comments. We'll review those and try to respond to those as best we can. But I want to thank everybody again for listening this week. If you've not done so, please leave us a rating or a review, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. It really helps and we really appreciate it.
Thanks for lending us your ears.
Have a great week, everybody. And we'll see you here next Monday.
Bye-bye.